Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Maine Take. My name is Dana Connors, and I'm still pleased to be your host of this program brought to you by the Maine State Chamber of Commerce. And by now, you know the routine. With the help of our guests, each program takes a look at some of the issues, the ideas, the initiatives that work in our state to try to improve the lives of Maine people as well as their livelihood. And most of all, to try to find a path forward for growing our economy. Well, today we're going to speak to the very heart of those ideas and issues by welcoming back to our program at the beginning of this 131st, the four members of our advocacy team right here at the State Chamber of Commerce. And then I'm going to follow that up with an issue that we're all very concerned about. And what is the trend in housing and housing sales and so forth? Peter Van Allen of Maine Biz is going to share that information with us. So let's begin with our advocacy team. First of all, they probably need no introduction. They've been on the program many times, but I'll do it nevertheless. Our Vice President is Linda Caprera. She looks at those issues associated with taxation, appropriations, and the like. Very next to her on the screen is Peter Gore. Peter has been with us for 29 years, but has taken a responsibility, a job with Main Street Solutions, but is under contract with us to look after those issues that he's been very effective at over the years. And that, of course, is labor and human resource. Very next to him is Simon West. Simon, amongst other things, works to look at those issues associated with workforce and education. And also we have Ben Lucas, who will be reviewing with us the heartbeat of what's going on in education. Yeah, he probably wishes it was education, but it's environment and natural resources, as well as energy, utilities, and technology. So welcome, team. And Linda, I'm going to kick it off because we don't have all that much time. Give us a glimpse into the beginning of the 131st session. From a bird's eye view, what do you see?
Good afternoon, everyone. Yes, as Dana said, this is the first regular session of the 131st legislature. This is the long session out of a 2-year session. Next year will be a short session. This session, if you have to characterize it, there's a lot of unknowns this session. What we do know, though, however, the numbers in the House and Senate really haven't changed. In the Senate, you have 22 Ds, 13 Rs. In the House, you have 82 Ds. The R's did pick up 1 seat with 67, and you have 2 independents. You have a lot of the unknowns, though, there are a lot of new legislators. You have 59 new legislators in the House and 4 in the Senate that have never served in the legislature before. Those are large numbers. What does that translate into? Lack of institutional memory about the history in terms of the programs and the issues at the legislature. So we'll have to see how that plays out. There's also a lot of new leadership. With the exception of the Senate Democrats, all the other leaders are new to leadership, new positions. So it's going to be interesting to see how they work across the aisle with each other in the House and Senate, how they work down the hallway with each other, and how they work with the governor's office, the administration on different issues. So that's kind of unknown. The budget, the governor did release her budget. It does include a $900 million increase. So we'll see how that transpires. They are dealing with the supplemental budget right now, but then they will transfer and go into the Part A budget, which is the biennial budget. Is it going to be a 2/3 budget, as we all hope it will be, or is it going to be a majority? Only time will tell. In addition to that, you have a lot of issues that a lot of legislators are going to wrap their arms around. And I think there's bipartisan support and really moving something forward on childcare, housing, broadband, workforce. You have a Maine strategic plan, which is a 10-year plan that sets forth goals for Maine, just ensuring the state's prosperity. It's going to be interesting to see how the legislature incorporates that as well, because a lot of those issues that I just talked about are encompassed in that plan. And it's really a path forward to see how Maine should really go forward, for economic prosperity. So it's a lot of issues that are coming forth. They've had a kind of a slow start. They have been meeting about 4 weeks now, and committees are just getting into meet and greets. Last week they had to postpone both sessions on Tuesday and Thursday due to the weather, so they're kind of getting a little slower start. But I'm sure everything's gonna be fast and furious in no time at all, especially with over 2,100 bills. So I'll turn it over to Ben. Your thoughts?
Yeah, thanks, Linda, and good afternoon, everyone. Good to be back on the program. To start, as Linda just mentioned, we've seen 2,100 bill titles, which has been released. So far, there have been right around 400 bills that we have seen with language that you're able to get a more thorough understanding of. As we all know, with titles, it can be a little bit challenging, but it gives you a good sense of the issues to come. I want to spend my time today kind of talking about two issues, which I think in my policy areas are going to be a driver of a lot of the conversations this upcoming legislative session. I'll start with the Energy Committee, Energy Utility Technology Committee. We all know right now the cost of energy is the number one thing that we're hearing about from businesses. You're hearing about from individuals with their electric bills, et cetera. It is something that the committee is going to take a very proactive look at trying to address the cost of energy. There have been a number of pieces of legislation that we've seen either in titles or in the bills that have been printed so far that are looking to address the high increase in what we're all facing right now with the cost of energy. The thing that's difficult with the cost of energy is, there's not always one concrete solution that you can point to. It's usually a plethora of a number of different issues which cause the increase. So one thing the chamber is going to be advocating for this legislative session is the need for a strategic energy plan. We've seen the state do that, as Linda previously mentioned, with the 10-year economic plan. We've seen the administration put one forward for the climate action plan. And we feel as from the chamber perspective, we're at a critical point where we need an energy plan. There is certainly a lot happening with the switch to renewables. We just also heard earlier today, the Public Utilities Commission gave approval to the Northern Maine transmission line and the wind project, which is very exciting news. The PUC just voted on that unanimously around 10 o'clock this morning. So we need to have a plan to guide the future of energy policy in Maine to help lower the cost of energy. The other issue I want to touch on is the issue of PFAS and the Environment and Natural Resources Committee. We all know that Maine has taken a very proactive approach on trying to address the PFAS problem that has arose in our state. There's one bill in particular that's particularly difficult for the business community to comply with, which passed back in July of 2021, which said companies need to test and report every single product to the Maine Department of Environmental Protection if it has had PFAS intentionally added. It's a very broad law. It's a well-intended law, but I think when it passed the legislature, there wasn't a full recognition of the level and the impacts that it was going to have on the business community, the cost that is associated with it. It's going to be very, very difficult to test and report. Regulatorily speaking, there's a lot of challenges that have arose at the department. We want to try and find the right balance, which seeks to address the real problem of PFAS, which is limiting the amount of human exposure to PFAS, limit the amount of PFAS that make its way into the waste stream through food, water, other sources, but making sure policies are enacted in a way that doesn't absolutely cripple our economy, the products that are manufactured here, the jobs that they provide, and the overall business community in Maine. So if I would kind of summarize what I think two of the biggest issues in my policy area, it's going to be cost of energy and energy planning in the Energy Committee and PFAS in the Environment Committee. There's going to be a lot of legislation from all different interested parties dealing with those two issues in particular. And I think that'll drive a lot of the chamber's efforts in those two policy committees. So with that, I'll turn it over to Peter Gore.
Thank you, Ben. And it's nice to be back with you all this afternoon. I think both Ben and Linda have set it up fairly succinctly. A lot of legislation and not as much time as they think they have to work on these issues. I said before to people, I'm not sure the institution's set up to deal with 2,000 public hearings and what will essentially be, they need to be done by mid-May, really. So that's 3.5 months. That's a lot of public hearings. It's compounded by the fact that a lot of the bills that have come out of the revisor's office are what they call concept drafts, which really means it's a bill with no discernible language attached to it, other than this is a concept draft which seeks to improve Maine's economy, for example. It's hard to know what a piece of legislation like that's going to do, and the problem for us as lobbyists and government affairs people in the State House is we oftentimes in the past haven't known until the public hearing came around. And that's disconcerting, and it makes providing adequate comment and being effective difficult. The good news is we're back in person in front of the committees, and they are accepting public testimony. I think all of us have testimony already, if not scheduled for this week, scheduled for next. As I predicted, as I look at the titles that are appearing in front of the Labor Committee, it will be a very challenging session. And there are a number of different bills which appear to be retreads of ideas that have been proposed in the past, but new ideas that have come out of and issues that have come out of the pandemic. One of the bills I'm watching most closely and was printed and is essentially a concept draft is LD 324. It's an act to prevent the wrongful firing of Maine workers. This is a revisiting of the employment at will debate that took place in the first session of the 130th legislature. It has some of the same ideas attached to it. No wrongful discharge, requires progressive discipline, limits the use of electronic monitoring. I want to go back to that. Provides for severance pay and allows for private rights of action. And there are a couple of bills that are out there dealing with both surveillance, flexible work schedules that I think are targeted and attempt to address the issue of working from home and employers wishing to bring their employees back to the workplace. And there is maybe some resistance to that. I think that's the flexible schedule issue and the monitoring issue. But it's hard to know until we see more of these bills printed. There are also a plethora of minimum wage bills and other type of HR bills, which I'm sure will provoke a fair amount of comment from both businesses and employee advocates. It will be a busy session. I anticipate it will be a long session. With that, all good news. I will hand it off to Simon.
Thank you, Peter. Of the two committees that I follow, the Education Cultural Affairs Committee and the IDEA Committee, roughly 40 bills have been referred and public hearings are taking place. To date, there's no legislation that should create a high degree of concern or excitement. One bill I do want to just briefly mention is LD 18, an act to provide ongoing funding for up to 2 years of community college for certain Maine students. This bill does exactly what it says in the title, which is to extend waivers on tuition and fees for students who meet certain parameters. I could certainly speak at length to the value and the innovative role that the community college system plays in Maine. And I'm happy to see that this type of support for that system and students. And without dimming their spotlight, I just want to express that the Chamber recognizes how critical every institution in higher education is for Maine and the economic growth and future success of our state. And I just want to make sure that there is no loss of perspective in that, and that support for one system doesn't become highly outweighed to the other systems. And with that, I will turn it back over to Dana Connors.
Thanks, Simon. Linda, why don't you speak to the issues that you're either promoting or you have a concern with? You are on mute.
Sorry, we have 4 priority bills that we're putting forward. One deals with the Pine Tree Zone Development Program, and that's going to extend the program out 2 years. Currently, the program sunsets at the end of 23. We have a workforce training bill. We don't have the specifics right now, but it will be a refundable tax credit for certain industries, anywhere from $1,200 to $2,500. We have not finalized the language on that bill, but that will be a workforce training credit we're going to put forth. The other one is an R&D credit, research and development credit, and that bill will basically make the current credit more workable. Currently, right now, you have to take a look back 3 years of what you expend on research and development and take the average. And if you go above the average, then you can take the credit. And that really makes it unworkable for a lot of companies today because they budget usually the same on R&D. So what our bill would do is lower that threshold from 100% to 50%. So if you go above 50% of what the average that you have been for the last 3 years, then you can take the credit. So that's really positive. And the last one we have is a child care credit bill that we're putting forth, and that would be a $3,000 credit if an employer provides to the employer, if they provide in kind, or if they just pay for outright child care expenses for their employees. So those are 3 major priorities we're putting forth this session. One of the bills that is very problematic that we have seen, it's actually in the IDEA committee, it's LD 103. And what that bill would do is we are going to be opposing it. The bill would basically require that large employers provide on-site daycare in order to receive tax credits. So we're in strong opposition to that bill. I understand there may be an amendment, so we're going to have to wait and see, but right now, we are testifying in opposition to that bill. Today, taxation is going to be considering the conformity bill, LD7, which is basically the annual conformity bill, and it conforms Maine income tax laws to the federal income tax laws. So we basically monitor that bill to see what changes are being put forth. We typically, as a business community, like conformity because it's easier for bookkeeping purposes, but we'll have to wait and see what the Maine Revenue Services says for that there will be changes on. So that's about it in my world. Dana?
Yeah, I mean, I wish this program was a couple hours because even though it's only been, well, it has been a month since it began, there's only like 400 bills out and we barely touched the surface, if you will, on the issues that for those who are viewing this program, you can clearly see a dozen bills that we may have touched upon by reference or more specific here today is only a dozen out of 2,100. Not that we're going to follow all 2,100, but with 4 very competent members of our advocacy team here at the State Chamber, we will do more than our share in being the voice of business, looking out for your interest. I would only close out this session realizing that there is so much more that we could talk about. I would encourage anybody viewing or anybody interested to reach out to any of us, be it myself, Linda, Simon, Ben, Peter. We're on the website. You can reach us through that process or by calling us, but we're there eager to try to answer your questions and provide you the type of information that you're looking for. So team, I'm going to let you go so you can get over the legislature and do your thing and pick up the action. And thank you, by the way. I'm very proud of what you do and proud that I could be with you for as long as I have. So thanks. Appreciate it.
Bye.
And I'm going to turn it over to Peter Van Allen. Peter, we welcome you back. We know you're a busy guy, but we welcome every time you have the opportunity to be on our show. And today, you're going to give us a bird's eye view into the real estate market. What can you say?
Thanks, Dana. Appreciate it. It's always great to be on the show. So the big real estate conference was last week, the Merida Real Estate Forecast Conference. This is when they have experts for all range of the real estate industry talk about what their outlook is for this year. And of course, the backdrop of this is that we've had 2 very, very strong years in real estate, residential, commercial, demand for commercial space, industrial space, office space, even office space amid the pandemic had been relatively strong. And now going into this year, there was a lot of uncertainty. We've got higher interest rates. We've got the ongoing volatility with construction costs and materials costs. We've got lingering supply chain issues. We've got the threat of recession. But through all of that, I mean, there's still a great deal of optimism in the real estate industry. I would address first the residential market, because that's the one that we really saw shot off during the pandemic as people from out of state moved to kind of safer places like Maine. So the real estate, was characterized by bidding wars, cash offers. A lot of people were coming from markets that had, they were selling a very expensive house, moving to Maine and paying cash and being willing to go pay well over offer price for houses. As a result, the median sale price last year topped out at $360,000. And keep in mind, just as context, just 5 years ago in 2017, the median home price was $200,000 in Maine. And now we're up in the 300s. It's settled back down a bit. The year ended at about $335,000 for the median home price. But in southern Maine, we're talking $470,000. And that, according to David Davin, who owns Portside Real Estate and is always offers a ton of information, she said the prices will probably go down overall or level off at least. But for the homes that people really want, kind of those cream puff listings that are move-in ready, she said they're still getting multiple offers on those places and people are still paying cash. So it's really the ones that are kind of falling to the wayside are the houses that, we know will need a lot of work. It's hard to get a contractor right now. It's hard to step in. And so some of those houses are either being reduced in price or in some cases the listing is expiring. And we're having the same issues really with multifamily housing. Britt Vitalius from Vitalius Real Estate addressed this. In Portland alone right now, there are 2 big apartment buildings going up that'll bring 360 new housing units into Portland. There is some concern among developers about some of the regulations in Portland, including the Green New Deal. And there was a lot of discussion at Merida that some of the development money is flowing out to Saco, Bedford, and Lewiston, Auburn, and those cities are becoming beneficiaries of this real estate boom. And I would just close by saying that. And this is a little bit more anecdotal, what we're hearing from construction firms and what we heard at our own Maine Biz 5 on the Future panel. Construction firms are booked out, not just through this year, but for most of next year as well. I mean, they've booked business. They don't know what 2025 will look like, but they're booked for the next, say 18 months. And there's a lot that still needs to be determined what's going to happen with the economy, whether we're going to have a recession. Construction prices are still high, but some of the supply chain issues have settled out. So there's a lot of question marks, beyond next year, what things are going to look like. But for right now, everybody's still pretty busy.
Yeah, it sure sounds it. There's a lot there to unwrap. But let me ask you this. You mentioned that the median price was around 360, except in the greater Portland area or southern Maine, it was more like in the mid 400,000.
Yeah, 470, I think.
Yeah, I mean, the pandemic brought not only people to our state because of the quality of life, but also the healthy presence that they saw in our state. What has been the trend or the experience in the more rural parts? Anecdotally, it seems that a number of people, because of broadband capacity or the promise of it at least, have reached out to those rural areas. Did the report that they do give any indication of experiences in the more rural areas?
Well, what we've heard a lot of in the past couple of years at Maine Biz is people did move to rural areas. A lot of this pandemic migration that we've had has been people who have wanted to work remotely here. So yes, they're moving to rural areas, but is there broadband? That's kind of the key thing. And we see a lot of effort. There's going to be quite a bit of money coming in with to beef up broadband in different parts of the state. We've seen with the Maine Connectivity Authority. But that, I think that it's a little bit of a question mark still, Dana. I mean, as long as you can get broadband, you have a pretty good shot of getting some of that investment investment in your town, but that's a big if in certain places.
Yeah, sure is. Well, Peter, it's always a pleasure having you on board. Your information is always timely and informational, and we know the value of information in the world we live in today. The more that you have, the better the decisions and the judgments that we make. So until next time, which I hope is soon, thank you for being on the show and look forward to that next time.
Thank you so much, Dana. Appreciate it. Always a pleasure.
It's our pleasure. And now for the takeaway, I guess I would begin by acknowledging what I just stated, that the value of information is without question. But I would also say, after listening to our advocacy team and listening to what Peter had to provide, I would say so isn't your participation, your voice. What you heard in our first segment today was, even though it was only a glimpse, a very minor glimpse, there are 400 bills out approximately that have a description, but there's another 1,700 that will come forward. And this does not take into account the budget, which is really the roadmap for the next 2 years, the priorities that will be in place. What I'm really getting at is these are very important issues. They affect each and every one of our lives, and to many, their livelihood. They really try to attempt in one way or another to grow our economy, or perhaps, maybe not intended, but nevertheless, they may stand in the way of growing our economy. Whatever the case is, whatever you're interested in, there are issues that really do seek your input, your voice, your opinion. And that's really what I'm speaking of here today in this takeaway. I would urge you to seek out your local regional chamber or the state chamber, or even through the media. Find out those issues that are important. There will be many, and some very positive, and some not so positive as you may see them. But once you do that, and once you find those issues of interest, please don't hesitate to reach out to your senator or your representative here in the state of Maine. It's very important that you do that. We can do it if it's a hearing, as our team mentioned. You have that capacity if you live where I come from in Aroostook County to testify in those committee settings by Zoom. Or if you're nearby, it's always wonderful to show up in person. Whatever your method may be, your voice is what's important. Your legislators are there to serve you. They were elected to represent you. They do want to hear from you. I often hear that, oh my goodness, the legislators must be overwhelmed with calls or letters, and I don't want to bother them. Well, sometimes there are those in which generate a lot of input, but many, many times you hear legislators, I wish I could hear from my constituents. I don't get nearly the amount of mail or outreach as one may think. In other words, they really do want to hear from you. They want to do what is right for you. I can't stress that enough. You know, we are brought up knowing that every vote counts. But I'm also indicating that each and every voice on issues matter. It not only matters, it will make a difference. That I can assure you of. Your legislator will appreciate it, and truthfully, so won't you, because you let them know what was important to you, and that's what they want to hear as well. So with that, I thank you for attending. That is our takeaway for this week. I look forward to seeing you right back here in the near future. And until that time, please take care of yourself and take care of one another. And I look forward to seeing you just as soon as possibly can. But until then, take care.